Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news, so stay with us. The Biden administration announced Tuesday that it has removed Cuba from the list of countries that allegedly sponsor terrorism. The decision revokes the National Security Memorandum approved by former President Donald Trump in July 2017 and orders the Secretary of Treasury to begin a process to implement the measure. The decision also includes the suspension of the Title III of the Helms-Burton Law, which allows U.S. citizens to claim damages for what the law describes as trafficking on U.S. properties confiscated at the beginning of the Cuban Revolution. The measure also left several financial sanctions decreed by Trump administration against the Caribbean island. According to the White House officials, the decision was part of a deal facilitated by the Catholic Church for the release of prisoners. Cuba had been reinstated in that list during the last days of the Trump administration in January 2021. We will go deep into this topic in our second segment. The president of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, made a statement on his X account about the recent removal of the Caribbean country from the U.S. state sponsors of terrorism list. The statement by the Cuban head of state reads, "I thank all those who contributed to the decision announced today by the U.S. to remove Cuba from the list of state sponsors of terrorism, of which it should never have been part and which, together with two other measures taken, has had a severe impact on the country and Cuban families." The communique continues as follows. "It is a decision in the right direction, although belatedly and with limited range. The blockade and most of the extreme measures that were enforced since 2017 to suffocate the Cuban economy and cause shortages to our people are still in force." Finally, it concludes, "We will continue to confront and denounce the economic war and the actions of interference, disinformation, and discredit financed with U.S. federal funds. Likewise, we will not give up on developing a civilized and respectful relationship of our sovereignty with the U.S." Cuba's foreign ministry described the U.S. government's decision as a positive one and moving in the right direction, but affirmed that the U.S. blockade against the Caribbean island was still in force and continued affecting the Cuban people. Through an official communique issued on Tuesday, the Cuban ministry expressed that the U.S. decision excludes Cuba from the State Department's list of countries that allegedly sponsor terrorism, makes use of the presidential prerogative to prevent action in U.S. courts in relation to lawsuits filed under the Title III of the Helms-Burton Act, and removes the list of restricted Cuban entities that designates a group of institutions with which U.S. citizens and institutions are prohibited from engaging in financial transactions and which has had effects on third countries. The statement of the government agency affirms that despite its limited nature, the decision goes in the right direction and in line with the sustained and firm claim of the government and people of Cuba, and with the broad, emphatic, and reiterated call of numerous governments, especially in Latin America and the Caribbean, of Cubans living abroad, of political, religious, and social organizations, and of numerous political personalities in the United States and other countries. The text also ends by thanking everyone for their contribution and sensitivity. The President of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, announced that she will not attend the inauguration of the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, scheduled for January 20, 2025. During her morning press conference, the Mexican president explained that Mexican ambassador to the United States will attend the inauguration ceremony on her behalf. This increase of tensions between both countries due to the threat of the U.S. President-elect to apply tariffs and massive deportations against Mexico. Claudia Sheinbaum has ratified Mexico's sovereignty and her intention to maintain good commercial relations with Washington. In Venezuela, the National Assembly held a meeting on Tuesday following the summons to political parties to decide the 2025 electoral timetable. National Assembly President Jorge Rodriguez detailed that the Special Commission for the Review of the Rules and Laws on Electoral Processes and Political Parties will go over the necessary arrangements to carry out the local, regional and parliamentary elections scheduled for the year 2025. The aim is to set out the different guidelines on election days, what qualifies a candidate to run, and period for election awareness and campaigning.
The
level of convening and attendance that this meeting has had, by this special commission appointed by the National Assembly of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to work on issues related to electoral laws, election timetables. And, what better expression of exchange of conversation, dialogue, proposals and deepening of democratic practice than achieving consensus, than to do it all together in these processes that also determine the characteristics of the political practice in Venezuela.
The president of the Venezuelan parliament recalled that during the Bolivarian Revolution, the country has not failed to comply with the electoral obligations contemplated in the constitution.
During the times of the Fifth Republic, Venezuela has not failed to carry out a single one of the elections that are scheduled according to the constitutional obligations. In this case, we are in the presence of a particularly important year in terms of elections. We are not only referring to the new forms of consultation with the people of Venezuela, which are also established in this constitution, the approval referendums, the consultation referendums such as the consultation referendum for the Guayana Esequiba that we have already carried out, the revoking referendums for the positions of popular election, the different forms to consult the people on the projects such as the case of the communal circuits, the communes and the communal councils.
Venezuelan Foreign Minister Iván Gil announced the decision to limit to 3 the number of diplomats accredited in the embassies of the Netherlands, France and Italy in the country. The move comes in response to the hostile conduct of these governments, marked by their support for extremist groups and their interference in internal affairs. In addition, diplomats must have written authorization from the Venezuelan Foreign Ministry to travel more than 40 kilometers from Bolivar Square in Caracas. The measure is to be complied with within 48 hours. Venezuela demands respect for sovereignty and self-determination, principles established in the United Nations Charter. Within the World Festival of the Anti-Fascist International, Caracas hosted anti-fascists from all over the world. Among the participants were several delegates from European countries who have described the neo-fascist wave and its purposes to our special envoy, Juno Suner.
Stalking Italy's streets.
The European continent was the birthplace of fascism, with the expression being derived from the Italian word fascio, bundle, referring to gangs of Mussolini. After its defeat in the Second World War, Italy became a parliamentary republic, which is being challenged today again.
And they are trying to change our constitution to delete every democratic power, like the parliamentary power. They want to make an executive power. We have a strong, independent magistratura, and they want to put judge under the government.
Fascist challenges against established parliamentary order are not limited to Italy.
Because in their nature, they want to destroy the democratic institution as a whole. So yes, it's like opening the cage and letting the wolves in.
Who are the sheep that fascists are after? Different countries, different answers.
They are making the law against the demonstration outside. They make the straddle block, the typical way of battle of the workers. In Italy now, it's a penalty that you can go to the jail for this.
Why? Because they want to curtail our rights, rights which we take for granted now, because they are our rights. For example, all the rights that feminism has brought to not only women, but the society as a whole. For example, the right to abortion, to a legal and safe abortion for all women.
The European delegates say that neo-fascist wave rejects to accept political competition defining its opponents as enemies. Romanian politician Șoșoacă was barred by her country's constitutional court from becoming a candidate in the presidential elections in 2024.
And because I'm against oppression of USA, oppression of European Commission, and oppression of Israel, and because I said free Palestine, I'm anti-Semite, and that's why Constitutional Court forbid me to candidate.
Șoșoacă says that the United States and the European Union act as Romania's masters, calling everyone who calls for peace in Ukraine, Romania's neighbor, a pro-Putin extremist. The fight against fascism needs to be international, agrees Aricale.
The topic is the same. The fight for the peace, for new peaceful world, for a multipolar world is common for us. And only if we stand together against the power of the West, imperial West, we can fight them, because they are the less, they are few.
The events organized in Venezuela play a key role in constructing that net against fascism. Yunus Soner, teleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela.
In Ecuador, the electoral campaign moves forward with the candidates touring different provinces to present their proposal amidst violence and power struggles. In total, there are 16 candidates running on this occasion. All of them are using social media to try to win votes by appealing to local needs as well as to national challenges. The campaign has been marked by the brutal murder of 4 children after a military operation and the ongoing controversy between President Daniel Noboa and his Vice President, Veronica Abad, in addition to the murder of Arenillas Major, Eber Pons, which led Noboa to retake the presidency after he asked for a 3-day leave of absence. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. And as we informed, the Biden administration announced Tuesday that it has removed Cuba from the list of countries that allegedly sponsored terrorism. And to go deep into the relevance of this announcement, we contact analyst Layan Fuleihan from the People's Forum. Hi, Layan, and thank you for your time here in From the South.
Thank you so much for having me.
For 4 years, the island has been included on this list, despite there being no evidence that would justify its inclusion. But what does this list mean?
This list has no meaning at this point. I mean, the fact that Cuba is on this list means the list has no meaning. The greatest terrorist sponsors of terrorism in the world right now, we can see them with our own eyes. It is the United States and Israel who have been massacring the people of Gaza, the children of Gaza, for over 15 months. The fact that Cuba is included on this list just goes to show that the list is a political tool used by the United States to try to isolate the countries that it is waging hybrid war against. So the fact that Biden took so long to take Cuba off the list, it's a great thing that Cuba is off the list, but Biden should have done it the first day that he came into office.
The President Miguel Díaz-Canel assured today that this measure has had a high cost for the country. How does that translate into the real impacts of this list on the lives of Cuban ordinary people?
Well, this list adds another layer to the very intense blockade that has been imposed on the people of Cuba for over 60 years. This list makes it an extra level of difficulty for Cuba to be able to make any financial transactions. in the international sphere and to work with any other entities in any kind of exchange in purchasing necessary items like food and medicine. And it creates a level of intimidation because the United States is indicating with this list that they also will take action against those who do work with Cuba. And it's, of course, very complex and very varied in the economic and legal spheres, but it creates an environment in which other parties and other countries think twice about making exchanges with Cuba because they do not want to incur the consequences that the United States would impose on them. This is a criminal level of blockade. It is designed to cut off the Cuban economy from the global economy. And it has already been said very clearly since the beginning that this is a tool used by the United States to try to starve the Cuban people into submission. It has not worked for decades.
Precisely, and also the removal of Cuba from the U.S. unilateral list of countries sponsors of terrorism, allegedly, is a victory, of course, for the Cuban people, but the struggle continues. What does this decision mean just a few days before the inauguration of President Donald Trump, who actually re-included Cuba on this list on his previous administration? And also let's recall that the blockade is yet very much in force. So what does that mean?
Well, we can take this as a victory for the Cuban people and also a sign that the sustained grassroots pressure in the campaign to remove Cuba from the list from the peoples of the world inside the United States, all who stand in solidarity with the Cuban people, and across the Americas and across the world, there has been a sustained campaign to remove Cuba from the list and lift the blockade. This is one victory on that path, but we know that the struggle does not end here. We have to continue advocating for the lifting of the entire blockade. It is in no one's interest to have this blockade. It is not in the interest of the United States people for there to be a blockade. Cuba is a neighboring country with much to share with us and much to exchange, and it is the right of neighborly people to be able to have international solidarity and to exchange. So the struggle will continue. Biden, in a very cowardly move, waited to the last week of his administration to do what he could have done the first day that he came into office. In fact, he could have done it with no real opposition because it was a policy of the Obama administration. The Obama administration was moving insufficiently, but moving towards more openings with Cuba. Biden could have said, we will undo what the Trump administration did, but he did not. He kept all of the Trump additional coercive sanctions. He kept Cuba on the list, which Trump was the one to first bring Cuba on, and he waited until this moment. Now Trump is coming back into office, and we will continue advocating that Cuba remain off the list and that we go forward with the lifting of the blockade. But of course, Biden has basically left it open for Trump to make a decision before Cuba can really recover economically from this brief moment of being off of the list. So we hope that Trump does not return Cuba to the list, but we have to notice that Biden should have done this 4 years ago.
What's the role that the activism from the U.S. is going to play in these moments of uncertainty ahead of the upcoming new government in the U.S. for Cuba?
Well, the people of the United States are going to continue calling for friendship and cooperation with the people of Cuba, with Cuba, with the country of Cuba, our neighboring country. There is a level of consciousness around Cuba that is very important, that is also continuing to grow. The United States has isolated itself from its own population and from the world population over the past year in unprecedented ways. Now the White House is synonymous with genocide. And the blockade, what's happening to the people of Cuba, is also a form of genocide, not through bombs, but through sanctions and through a blockade. The people of the United States are waking up to this reality, and the struggle in solidarity with Cuba will continue to grow.
Thank you, Lion, for your time hearing from the South.
Thank you very much for having me.
We were listening to Layan Fuleihan from the People's Forum in the framework of the U.S. President Joe Biden's lifting of state sponsor of terrorism designation for Cuba. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.